A few days back, I was just roaming around the streets of the internet, and I came across something that at first made me go, what kind of nonsense is this? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, wait, this could actually make sense. You remember the final scenes of Avengers Endgame? No, not the I am Iron Man snap. I'm talking about the moment where Captain America picks up the briefcase full of Infinity Stones, travels back to return them, and then comes back as an old man. Well, there's this theory floating around that Cap didn't actually return the Infinity Stones properly, and that's what causes incursions. And because of that, Dr. Doom himself is going to come after him. Now I know, on the surface, this sounds like lazy writing, like somebody just scribbled down whatever came to mind. But when you dig deeper, you start thinking, what if this is exactly where Endgame ends and Doom's saga begins? Before I go further, let me give a little disclaimer. There's a good chance this theory may never actually be true, but honestly, that doesn't matter. If by the end of this video you're entertained and thinking, man, that was fun, then my job is done. So let's break it down. Avengers. Endgame was the first time we were introduced to the idea of branch timelines and the chaos that comes with them. The Ancient One basically explained that if something diverges from the main timeline, a whole new branch gets created. The Avengers messing around with the Infinity Stones was exactly that. They were supposed to return every stone to the exact point it was taken from. But things get tricky after that. Take the Reality Stone, for example. First it was the ether, then they turned it back into a stone, and now Cap somehow has to shove it back into Jane Foster's body. I mean, how? Even Odin once said Asgard didn't have the tech to extract the ether from her, but Rocket Raccoon somehow managed it with just a syringe? Okay, fine. Let's just accept that if Rocket could take it out, Cap could probably put it back in. Then comes the Soul Stone. That one's a whole other mess. Like, what does Cap do? Walk up to Red Skull and say, hey man, here's your Soul Stone back. No hard feelings, right? But the biggest problem is the Power Stone. Let's say Cap managed to reverse engineer the orb and place it back. Fine. But what about the timeline they took it from? That reality is now left completely broken. And then there's the Space Stone timeline. Remember when they went back to grab it? Loki escapes with the Tesseract. Boom. Brand new branch reality right there. But the real chaos starts with the Mind Stone timeline. That whole situation is just a mess. Hydra now thinks Captain America is secretly working for them. Meanwhile, Cap himself walks away thinking, wait, Bucky's alive already? So who knows what kind of entanglements Hydra's got going on in that branch? Honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if this is the timeline where we actually get to see Captain Hydra, all because Steve Rogers screwed things up in the first place. And as if that wasn't enough damage, Steve literally left himself in the past. That alone created another brand new branch. Now, I know Loki Season 1. Episode 1 already explained this away by saying the Avengers were meant to time travel. Basically, whatever they did was always part of the plan, because He Who Remains had written it into the sacred timeline, and the TVA was just carrying out his script. So yeah, at that point, we just have to accept that everything in this loop was happening for his convenience. He wanted the Avengers to time travel. He wanted Loki to escape, because Loki did escape. That's what allowed the sacred timeline to complete itself. His only miscalculation? He didn't expect Loki to be so stubborn and eventually kill him. That's what set the real chaos in motion, because without He Who Remains, timelines started branching unchecked. Normally, TVA would have pruned all those irregular timelines, like the Captain Hydra one or any other branches the Avengers created. But Loki's whole deal was, no, let every branch grow, and once they started growing, there was no stopping them. Which means all of Steve Rogers' actions, traveling through time, returning the Infinity Stones, choosing to stay in the past, those timelines didn't just vanish, they still exist. So if you really think about it, the ones who actually caused the incursions in the MCU weren't Wanda or Strange or Spider-Man or even Loki, it was the Avengers themselves. Now sure, Marvel hasn't shown us the consequences of this yet. But that's because He Who Remains didn't want anyone interfering with the Avengers time heist. For him, it didn't create any problems, so he allowed it to happen. But now, with Loki sitting on that throne and no one pruning branches anymore, those timelines are out there unchecked. Which means Dr. Doom, who was perfectly fine ruling his own universe, suddenly starts seeing his world unravel. He traces it all back, and guess where it leads? Straight to Steve Rogers and the Avengers, and that is where Doom's story begins. So Doom starts digging deeper. He comes across incursions, basically catastrophic events where two timelines or universes collide and get destroyed. Naturally, he decides he's got to stop them, but then he realizes the best way to prevent incursions is to cut things off at the very root, and that's when he discovers the truth. It all traces back to the Avengers, and specifically Steve Rogers. Now let's be real, Dr. Doom would have zero hesitation here. In the comics, Doom time travels repeatedly just to save his goddaughter, Valeria Richards. So yeah, for him, this is nothing. Finding the origin point of the MCU's timeline chaos would be a huge deal. Eventually, Doom locates the so-called sacred timeline, what we call Earth 616. And when he gets there, what does he find? Tony Stark is already dead. The other guy responsible, Steve Rogers, well, he's not even in this universe. So who does Doom go after? Steve Rogers. Why? Because Steve was the one who said the words, "Avengers assemble." Now imagine this. Steve is living peacefully in the past, enjoying life with Peggy. Suddenly, he sees a figure walking toward him, someone who looks a lot like Tony Stark. His first thought, my friend Iron Man is back. He's here because I messed up the timeline, and now something terrible has happened. That's exactly the kind of opening where Doom could either manipulate Steve Rogers or straight up kill him. I know, it sounds wild, but picture this. You're in the theater watching Avengers, Doomsday, and the very first scene is Steve Rogers holding the briefcase of Infinity Stones, traveling back through time. For so many fans who checked out of the MCU after Endgame, seeing a direct callback to that film would instantly pull them back in. It would hit the nostalgia button hard, reminding everyone why they loved this universe in the first place. And suddenly, Doomsday doesn't just feel like another MCU installment, it feels like a direct sequel to Avengers Endgame. Doom would track Rogers down to the universe where he's still in peak condition, not old and retired. That sets up the perfect stage for Doom versus Chapter. Both have their reasons. Both have personal stakes. And if Marvel really wanted to raise the stakes, imagine Doom targeting Peggy Carter. That alone could spark the ultimate conflict. Now, do I think Marvel would go that far? Probably not. But hey, remember how the Russos shocked us by killing off almost all of Asgard in the opening of Infinity War? Marvel has pulled gut punches like this before, so don't be surprised if they go for something equally devastating to kick off Doom's saga. Back when the Russo brothers were first asked about returning to Marvel, they said they weren't ready. They'd had conversations with RDJ, with writers, with Marvel, but nothing was really coming together. Then, suddenly, Endgame writer Stephen McFeely called them with an opening. And that's what got everyone excited. RDJ got on board, the Russos got on board. But what was that opening? Nobody knows. What if, just what if, the opening was literally the ending of Endgame? Using the ending of one movie as the beginning of another? To me, that makes perfect sense. Of course, Marvel has been throwing fake leaks and rumors left and right to misdirect fans. We've seen it before. Somebody literally walked onto a so-called Doomsday set. Zero consequences. Which basically means, yeah, that wasn't Doomsday at all. Just another misdirect. But still, I can't shake the feeling that some of this theory could actually be true. Especially because recently, reports started circulating that Marvel has already brought back Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter. Apparently, on set, Steve Rogers' codename is Luke Cage. And there's even been word that Marvel built a set labeled Luke Cage's house. Think about it. That could literally be the same house we saw in Endgame, where Steve and Peggy had their dance. If that's true, then Cap's return in this storyline makes perfect sense. Why? Because in the comics, Captain America plays a huge role in the Time Runs Out storyline, the lead-in to Secret Wars. Granted, that was Old Man Cap, not the one in his prime. But hey, if Marvel's already pulling heroes from different timelines, why not Steve Rogers too? Now, look, I know if I start speculating, I'll spiral and never stop. But honestly, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Because here's the real question. When Doctor Strange looked into 14 million outcomes during Infinity War, why didn't he see this one? And how exactly does Doctor Doom rise from all this? We'll talk about that in another video. But for now, if you've already found your Peggy Carter in some other timeline and you don't want Doom showing up at your door, make sure you smash that like button.